Hey Supercross fans, Jason Weigandt here. I cannot believe my good fortune. See, I had this video that I made in 2018, which is surprisingly similar to what we're seeing in 2022, where I talk about how many block passes and how much aggressive racing we've been seeing this year. This year being either 18 or 22, or probably years before that or in between. We have seen a lot of aggressive racing this year. So I was waiting for the opportunity to just roll out this video that I made 4 years ago, the guide to arguing about block passing, but I just needed that perfect situation, and I probably blew it because they had so many races this year where some combination of Malcolm Stewart, Justin Barcia, Jason Anderson, maybe Marvin Musquin on Malcolm, some combination like that kept happening, but we had other hot topics, and I'm like, surely this fire is going to be extinguished, and we're not going to get any more block passing, and then, no, it happened. Probably wasn't a surprise that Justin Barcia and Jason Anderson were involved, and now we have our first actual penalty for a same lap pass. Barcia was already on probation from earlier in the year with aggressive riding with Justin Bogle. Oops, forgot Bogle was involved this year and that stuff. And now for violating the probation, Barcia has been giving a $3,000 three-point penalty from the AMA stewards at the end of the race in Indianapolis. So now I can bring my old block pass video back. And what I can also do is bring back my visual aid from that video. This is it right here. I thought I was going to be really organized in life and use this whiteboard for stuff. But as you will see, on February of 2018, I drew this block pass diagram of a corner. And I never erased it, and I never used the dry erase board again. And before we get to the video, I want to thank our sponsor, Anti-Gravity Batteries. I have two here, two sets of anti-gravity batteries. Both are very light. I would say this one is slightly lighter. This is the one used by Supercross race teams like Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing and Monster Energy Kawasaki. It is the lightest weight battery possible. This one is slightly heavier, but still very light. Has a little extra juice, which means it is a built-in jump starter. So if you're like me and you don't do any maintenance and you don't trickle charge your bike because you're a moron, the bike can still be started. And also, a lot of the top GNCC teams use these batteries. Why? Because starting your engine quickly with a dead engine start is everything. I have a brand new Yamaha. It starts very slowly until I installed one of these bad boys, and suddenly I'll be getting much better starts than my riding can cash. But enough from me now. You already know where the battle lines are drawn. It's Barcia versus Anderson. Barcia either finally got penalized, or maybe he didn't get penalized enough because of all the transgressions of the past, although Barcia always thinks it's just good racing. And Anderson, either that's really unfortunate because he could have won the race and gotten some points back in Eli Tomac, or maybe Anderson had it coming because he was rough with Malcolm Stewart earlier in the year, then Malcolm was rough with him. And then Barcia and Malcolm, by the way, have an illustrious history. Look up their run-in at Daytona a few years ago, and then the time in the Utah National where Malcolm actually went off the track and pushed Barcia into this pole and wiring and fencing off the side of the track.
Early in this race, just battling to get in the top 10. Here he is fighting it out with Malcolm Stewart. They come together. Oh, wow. Malcolm, that way, he was determined to put Barcia off the track.
This is a combustible mix. It's pretty funny to watch a heat race where Eli Tomac wanted nothing to do with any of it over the weekend in Indianapolis. And when he saw the guys battling and he got on the outside of Malcolm Stewart, he just got on the brakes. Have at it, boys. But not if you're in the points lead. Okay, how do you argue block passing? That's the key thing. Let's get to the classic video. Hey Supercross fans, Jason Weigandt here. We had some great racing at the 250SX East Opener at Dallas. We've really had great racing all year in both classes. And I've noticed more block passing, more inside outs, more cat and mouse type battles this season than previous. Maybe we've removed the calming influence of Ryan Dungey, or maybe there's the Steve Mathis nets, which have led to more berms for more block passing. But for whatever reason, we've had a lot and we know we're going to have more. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to argue about block passing, because if there's one thing we know, block passing doesn't just create passes, it also creates arguments. And I'd argue, even in today's polarized society, some of the most heated debates of all. Because for our most situations, we have one side versus the other. Whose fault is it, one rider or the other? But it has two other elements. First, there's the group that gets really mad that there's any block passing happening at all. And then we have the group that's really mad that people are really mad about it. So let me help you with this guide to arguing. Now, the first stage of the game is to try to figure out whose fault it was that there was a block pass in the first place. Now, obviously, the rider doing the block passing you would think is at fault, but no argument can ever be quite that simple. In fact, many times, the rider who gets knocked down and passed is the one who gets blamed, for he should have known better than to leave the door open. For the first time, I'm going to give some visual aids to explain how it is almost impossible to not leave the door open on a Supercross track. Ready? I don't know why this Supercross bowl turn looks more like a girl in a pair of blue jeans bending over. Or maybe I just always see that. If a rider were to come in and they take the normal fast line, which is this, the rider behind him is just going to go this way and block pass him at the exit of the corner. Now, if the rider in the lead tries to take that line, this is such a slow way to turn, the second place rider will just go like this and pass them. There's really nothing you can do in that corner. You can enter on the inside and end up on the outside and get passed, or you can enter on the outside and then get passed by the rider that cuts to the inside. But either way, you're going to get passed if the rider behind you is close enough and committed enough, and that's actually awesome. That's why these bowl turns and Steve Mathis nets exist. The idea is that if you're in second, you cannot be blocked. If you want to make the pass, you can make the pass. There, yes, is a level of protecting the inside and not opening up your turns that every rider knows, but if the rider behind you really wants to go for the gusto, there's not much you can do except maybe wait for him to get there, stop, and now you're in a cat and mouse game where you're hoping your front wheel doesn't hit his back wheel, and then you're all jammed up and on the ground hard in a corner. Now look, if you realize that it is physically impossible to cover the inside of a corner from beginning, middle, and end, and you're still trying to blame the rider who got block passed, the next thing you could say is, well, just go fast enough and he can't catch you. The most talked about block pass this year is Jason Anderson and Marvin Musquin in Oakland. And Marvin, even though he was the one that got put on the ground, did get a lot of heat for simply not going fast enough in the whoops to hold Jason off. So you can always use that argument too. But conversely, if you don't like the rider who did the actual block pass, you could say, well, what would Jeremy McGrath do? He never needed to use contact to make passes, and he has the most Supercross wins ever, and that is true. If you're the best rider ever, you probably don't need to make contact to make passes. Yes, if anyone wants to run the Jeremy McGrath didn't need to make contact to make passes argument, you can always counter with Bob Hanna, who we know at this point not only won races, but could presumably walk on water. And Hanna was not afraid of punting those stinking commies all the way back to Russia, if that's what he needed to do to win a race, or he'll just threaten to break your stinking legs in a corner. Hanna probably could have, somehow, miraculously, not opened the door all the way around a 180-degree bowl turn. Or he would have gone fast enough to pull away so you couldn't get him. Either way, the Hanna argument pretty much sticks. And then you can enhance that with this one. I hear it all the time. What are you getting so mad over contact for? This is high-end athletic competition. It ain't tiddlywinks. Now, no one really knows what tiddlywinks is, so here, I'm going to do you a favor and show you. The final argument you can run is, I watched it in slow motion. That's right. You watched it 35 times in a row in slow motion. It is so obvious. It is so obvious in slow motion who's at fault. Although there's someone else that also watched it 35 times in slow motion, and it is so obvious who's at fault, even though they are picking the exact opposite side. It's cats and dogs, it's day and night, it's black and white. Somehow it's obvious to you, and it's 180 degrees different to someone else who also watched it in slow motion, but just use that slow motion argument anyway. And when it's all heated up and you're talking Hanna and McGrath and slow-mo and you should have been fast enough to pull away, or you should be fast enough to make the pass without block passing, you can also throw in a generational thing. I hear that one too. Today's riders are wussies and they're afraid of contact, or today's riders are impatient and they don't know how to make passes without contact. Guys in the past use contact all the time, but that just made them grizzled veterans. Although they were the same age as today's riders back when they were doing it, so maybe they were just immature, impatient kids at the time. So now I'm totally lost. It's either your fault for not being fast enough to pass with or without it. McGrath wouldn't have done it. Hanna would have done it. Slow-mo proves both sides of each argument. I just left the door open, man. I have no idea where I'm at right now. I just block past myself. I just block past myself doing this.